All right. Good evening, folks. Welcome to Monday Night Live. This episode 4. Go over status and treaties on arrest and false imprisonment. This will be one you're probably going to want to rewatch. And there's Melissa Grover right there. Thank you for that link to Family Guardian, famguardian.gov. Or was it .gov? Hi, Rosa. Hi, Ashley, Bill, Chad, Susan, Malika, and Michael. How you doing, brother Michael? Hey, Joseph. Man, Melissa, that site is loaded. I have never seen a site, except for Freedom School, that's even come close to Freedom School. No other site have I seen so much information lined out and well organized. It's so, and I'm going to be sharing that here in just a minute. So we'll let people get on here before we get rolling. So I'd like to say hi to my peeps. I know we don't get to say hi to you folks out there too much, but when it's me here by myself, I'll do that because I really truly love you guys and thank you for following us. Leaders can't be leaders without followers, right? Right, Melissa, both of them. Yeah, Freedom School is a really good one that I've used for several years, and I haven't been back there in quite a while. I've been really actually digging into the books themselves and reading from the books, but it's a really great website too. So let me actually send a link. I'll put a link in here real quick. Where did you go? All right, I'm going to have to pull that main link up. There we go. And Guardian. This site just blows my mind. There's just so much great stuff here that it's not even funny. Okay, so here's the link to Family Guardian. And right at the very top there, it says, start here, path to freedom. You're going to want to go grab that, start there. That's initially where you need to start because there's a lot of education provided there right from the start, how to even use this site. So it is literally loaded, and I mean loaded with stuff. And here, I'll just go ahead and screen share so y'all can see what I'm looking at. And I need to pop my phone open so I can keep up with comments. Whoop. Have to go there. Yeah, this site is just loaded with mass amounts of information, knowledge, forms. Now you have to join and be a member, which I have not done yet. I've just been perusing it just as of 2 days ago. So I'm still overwhelmed with what I've discovered, what I've found. Thank you, Melissa, again. All right, get that posted. Oh, of course, it's tripping me out here. Facebook being funny. Funny stuff. Man, what is wrong with this? There we go. All right, y'all interested in learning about status? And then I'll go over the treaties on false arrest and imprisonment because it does have a little document in there. So, hi, Joe, PA. Yep, there is a sister site there. Hi, Carol. Yeah, it is. It truly is a site to visit and spend some time on. So as you're seeing this right now, this is where it says start here, path to freedom. Okay. Then you go in here and it takes you on down that road. It's a PDF here, which I probably should just go ahead and download this. I think I already did, but I started it. I started a whole new folder, file folder for downloading this stuff. So, oh, here, there, and yep, don't forget to share, like, follow, and share here on Facebook. And yeah, Rosa, actually in the treaties on arrest and false imprisonment, we'll get to that. So this is the beginning of Family Guardian is your path to freedom. This is kind of an outline of what to do and how to use this site. 381 pages, right? There's a lot here. So you're going to want to take some time and visit this site and read this so you can follow through with what you need to do. How to use this site. It can be very overwhelming if you don't have any directions, because if you see, clearly you can see this. There's all sorts, I mean, it's like, okay, well, where do you start? Right? You got your main topics, you got other important topics, you know, I mean, it's just, this place is just loaded. I mean, here's parenting, philosophy, morality, sexual, I mean, here's family law, dating, marriage, and divorce. Man, I could share you some dating advice. I haven't dated in over 3 years. Too occupied with what I have going on here, so don't have time for dating. But this site is, I mean, it's just loaded, folks. Loaded with all sorts of great stuff. And you're going to want to read this one first so that you know who, what, where, when, why, and what the direction it's going to take you in. I mean, they have YouTube videos. And in fact, YouTube, if you're not much of a reader, YouTube is pretty good for this because he's got pretty much everything broke down. So you can watch them. Here's another website, sedm.org, which is part of where we go for some other stuff. So, right, Brenda? Only dating I've had is court dates. Not my kind of dating, if you ask me. Yeah, Rosa, it would be nice. It would be nice. I am lonely at times, but you know, it is what it is, and I'm kind of picky, so, and I'm not really putting myself out there for dating, so. But here, you know, see how these are all broke down, 6.8.14. I mean, this is a very, very well laid out website. Oh, dude, Joseph, I'm 47 years old. I have partied and partied and partied my life away. I just can't party anymore. I mean, I go camping and that kind of stuff, but I don't like going to bars. That's just not my thing. Once in a great while, my brother will get me drug out of the house to go shoot some pool or something, but I'm more of a going camping, dirt bike riding, got my quad. You know, I'm an outdoors kind of guy. And this, I mean, seriously, this is just, it's all laid out here. So one document that I found here to start with was, is it this one? No. Okay, this is where we'll start here. Yeah, John and I actually went out to a couple of bars there in Tennessee, but it's just not my thing. I go all the way back up to the top here to start. Actually, I should have just left it right where it was at. All bars are for a place for you to get drunk and lose yourself and, you know, waste of life and time. I mean, at the time you think you're having a good time and stuff, but, you know, all that time we spent in the bars, we could be sitting right here reading something, learning something, educating ourselves. You know, all of those things out there that are entertainment is all by design to distract you from what's really going on around you, what's going on around in your state, in the nation, and around the world. You know, it helps us be complacent. You don't know what's going on out there. You don't care. That's what they prey on. They prey on the fact that you don't care. And there's all these other things out there to distract you and provide you with fun. Your phone, your tablet, your computers. You know, today's society is nothing but glued to a computer of some sort. And it's like, for those of us that are my age and a little bit older, that grew up in the 70s, 60s, right? We know that stuff didn't exist in our childhood. You know, we actually went outside and played. We played games, we board games, we made up stuff. You know, telephones were just kind of a new thing, and so were televisions. So, in my mind, I'd really like to just see it all wiped, but although we would lose the information highway, so it's a kind of a catch-22. All right. As independent sovereignty is the state's province, a duty to forbid interference by another state or foreign power with status of its own citizens. That's Roberts versus Roberts, 1947. I said this stuff is just loaded. This place is loaded. So so we have the introduction, basic for your exclusive right to declare and establish your civil status. What are we talking about? Civils, right here. What do we mean by civil status? So we're going to get through this. And I'm not going to go through this whole thing because I want to get into the treaties on arrest and false imprisonment. But this is one right here. In fact, I'll just go ahead. This is a PDF, but this is the link to the PDF, and I'll throw this in there right now. So you can go right directly to this and not have to go look for it. Right, Bill? Maybe that's how the Bar Association got started, in a bar with a bunch of crooks. Pretty much, right? Me too, Susan. I love going camping. Love the outdoors, getting out and getting away from everything else. And okay, what do we mean by civil status? We'll go right directly to 14. Notice all this law stuff that's in here. I mean, whoever put this stuff together did an amazing job. And by the way, as you can see, this says exhibit, right? This can be filed with your court paperwork, okay? This is technically a memorandum of law. Now it's had the tables of contents, all that good stuff. This is how you do, this is how you be sui juris. This is being perfectly capable of handling your administrative duties. This would be one of your administrative duties to speak the law, right? But if you're going to file anything that you file in the court of record, you have to know this. You have to know what's in your documents, because they're going to quiz you when you go into the courts. They're going to test you. They're going to test if you know what's in this document, right? So if you can't articulate what's in here, you're not a law sayer. You're not the lawyer. If you can't speak the law, it is the filing paperwork is really not going to do you much good. Really just isn't. Although there's ways around that. But still, you have to know this stuff. So whatever you use, you have to read it, comprehend it. If you have to take notes, right? Key points of this, whatever your document is, that's fine. Write it down. When you're giving your oral argument, you can read from your notes, right? And say, oh yeah, right here on page blah, 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 page 14, what is civil status? Okay, well, you could write these specific things down, or just cite just particular parts of it, right? I'm gonna back up just a hair there because it talks about the government. We emphasize that the purpose for which all governments are established is to protect private rights and private property according to our Declaration of Independence. Anyone who argues with this section indirectly is advocating that we do not have a government as defined by our founding documents. That's right. That's where I go into anything that is repugnant to this is null and void from its inception, not from the day you go to court and brand it on. We don't have to brand this crap unconstitutional. If it's repugnant to the law, say it. Here's the law. Anything repugnant to this is null and void. There will be no presumptions or assumptions here. I'm not going to presume, and we're not going to make an ass out of you and me. This is the truth. I will speak the truth as the law sayer. If you have any kind of rebuttal, then you better do it. Bring your rebuttal. Okay? Better have it in and on the record. Anything that you're going to cite, right? Because this would be filed in the court of record. Your court of record is nothing but these documents. It's not actually a court, not a courtroom. It's a court of record. The record is the court. So anything unrebutted, right, becomes truth, facts, and evidence in the record, in the court of record. So if they don't rebut this document or anything in this document, it becomes the truth, facts, and evidence in the record. And you can take action on all of this. And here's the part that I try to discuss, I guess, with certain people. Is they're like, oh yeah, well, what about the birth certificate and all of that? Okay, you're trying to make their argument for them. Why would you do that? Why would you try to make the argument of fraud? This is why you need to know what your rights are, where they come from in law, and how to cite them, because, and what the law actually is as it is written, right? So that anything that comes in conflict with that is null and void. And then let's say you got the prosecutor over there, or the other attorney, or so whatever, whoever over there starts blah, 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 blah. Objection, Your Honor. So-and-so is attempting to enter facts on the record that are not in evidence. They're not in the record. You have to have it in the court of record in order to speak on it. So if you don't perform your administrative duties and file your court of record and create your record, you can't reference anything from the record because it doesn't exist, right? This is just part of what we have to do. If you're going to speak on the law, you have to file it. Got to be in there. Okay? This is right straight out of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Okay? What does it mean to be self-evident? Common sense, common knowledge, common law, the fundamental law, fundamental principles, like 2 + 2 = 4. Most of us in our adult life, 2 + 2 = 4 is self-evident. Why? Because we've learned the fundamental principles of mathematics. And those principles dictate the correct answer every time. Mathematics, those principles don't care about your feelings, your emotions, or your opinions, right? Opinions are like a-holes. They all stink, right? We all have one and they all stink. So we go with facts of law, because here's something that can be demanded, right? In the end of a hearing or whatever, if they make a ruling of some sort, you can demand, finding of facts, right? Findings of facts, facts of law, and conclusions of law. If you provide the facts of law and the conclusions of law, right? Because they're just a referee here. That's their duty to perform, is just to be a referee, calling balls and strikes. That's it. They can only grant orders. They can only grant relief. They can't make SMU stuff made up, right? They can't make orders. That's not in our form of government. Judges don't give orders to the sense of ordering us what to do specifically to the people itself, right? Now, what can be done is an order from a higher court telling a lower court what to do, right? That's in our form of government. Like Christopher Hallett got his mandate. No, that gives Christopher Hallett special standing, that the higher court has said, hey, look, this guy's got his ducks in a row here, and here's the judicial mandate that this guy is on point. He knows his stuff. You better start listening to what he has to say, and you better start following the law. That's what the mandate does. That's an order to any court at this particular point now. So, yeah, well, that's because you're being deceived. That's a court order. Courts don't have the power to give you a direct order, right? I have the right to demand my relief, and your order is in with your paperwork. It's your order. The judge only signs off on it. They can only negotiate, that kind of stuff, right? So, what's up?
Got that stuff today, so.
Nice.
What time are you done?
Should be about 8:30.
8:30, okay, well, I'm not
Just give me a minute here, folks. Okay.
See you later.
All right. Love you. All right. Sorry. That was my mom stopping in saying hi. So these orders, court order, you can object to those, right? They don't have that lawful authority. Under what lawful authority are you giving me an order? What standing in law do you have to give me an order, right? You can only grant relief, and it must be in a competent court having subject matter jurisdiction. Do they actually have jurisdiction over that subject matter? Do they actually even have personal jurisdiction over you? That's part of what I went over there in episode 2, right? How do we take it off the tax rolls? Well, that's what we're going to get in here. That's pretty deep. It's hard to just get right into that particular point. We're trying to take baby steps here, so we have to learn some fundamental principles, right? So these are supposed to be self-evident, right? So ignorance of the law is no excuse. Can't be claimed by anybody, right? So either you're of sound mind, possessing logic and reason, and come to a reasonable conclusion based in reality, or you're insane. That's right out of Black's Law Dictionary. That's the definition of insane. If you can't come to a reasonable conclusion based in reality, then you're insane. This stuff is supposed to be self-evident, folks, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among, this is not all of them, this is just among these, are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are fundamental principles, fundamental law, the American common law, right? That to secure these rights, those ones, and among those, all of those that are self-evident, governments are instituted among men. Notice it's men, not kings, not queens, not rulers, not princes, or any of that, right? Deriving their just powers, jurisdiction, from the consent of the governed, right? That's the key. That is the key phrase right out of the Declaration of Independence, right there. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of governed. The Constitution is the social compact. That's the consent. That a bear you're an elected official or appointed into a position of public trust shall be bound by oath or affirmation. It's a quid pro quo contract. That's the contract of employment, right? If you got, I can guarantee you right now, social workers don't have that employment contract. They're impersonating government officials. They work for Department of Health and Welfare in the state of Idaho, right? So if you're working for one of the departments of government, in government, which is from the executive branch, as it says in Article 6, Clause 3, everyone from the legislative branch, executive branch, and judicial branch shall be bound by oath or affirmation, both at the federal and state level. Plain and simple, that's the contract of employment. And the terms and conditions of your contract is the law. This stuff that's supposed to be self-evident, because, right, it says that to secure these rights, that's right, we instituted government to secure these rights. Okay? That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. All political power is inherent in the people. We have the right to alter, reform, or abolish anything at any time we deem it necessary. That's what they're talking about right there. That's one of those rights that are among life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form. The Constitution is the form of government. How the president is brought into being, how the governor is brought into being. That's law of the land. That's due process of the law, right? That's all constitutions are, is process for bringing things into being. Bringing the president into being, bringing the members of the House and the Senate and Congress, both the state and federal level. That's what constitutions are. That's it. Okay? And then there's limitations on their scope and authority over what subject matters do you have. So you have to read the Constitution to understand what the limitations that are put on them, what actually was consent that was given. Because if it's not in the Constitution, they don't have that authority. We call that an emolument. That seat in government is an emolument. Right? Any advantage profit or gain received due to one's employment or holding office. That's an emolument. The building is an emolument. The money, the pay that they receive, that seat that they sit in, all of those things are emoluments, and they must be lawfully created. Where is the process in the Constitution allow you to create that position in government? Where was the consent given? Right? Well, Ginger, that's why I'm trying to explain it. That's, you can't comprehend this stuff if you don't read it, right? You have to read it. And once you read it, then it's like, oh, wait, yeah, okay. Like, the House has the sole power of impeachment. The Senate has the sole power to try those impeachments. Notice that it's in the legislature, Congress. It is not in the judicial. The judicial branch does not have the power over that. And then we read, I don't know, the First Amendment. We have the right to petition the government with the redress of our grievances. Oh, wait a minute. That's a right retained by the people. Article 1, Section 10 of my Idaho Constitution says that we have the right to petition the legislature with the redress of our grievances. It's in the Bill of Rights, a Declaration of Rights. That's a right retained by the people. That's power not delegated, because it's in the rights section, the law part. So we have to understand all of that. Yeah. Thanks, Joseph, for that. This is episode 4. So I'm trying to do these in somewhat of an order here, so that when you start from the beginning, episode 1, and work your way through these, you'll have a better picture of what I'm talking about here. It's hard to jump in the middle of a succession of education and grasp and know what you missed. If you've missed it, then you're not going to fully grasp what we're talking about here now. But this is the reason why I'm doing Monday nights solo now, so I can specifically focus on creating these episodes, which is exactly what you guys have been asking for. So what I'm trying to do, trying to educate the people the best I can. This is my time that I'm spending here trying to educate the people in mass. So furthermore, anyone who takes the position that there is no private property and the government owns everything indirectly must advocate atheism and is a thief, because the Bible itself says that God owns the whole earth and the heavens, right? Caesar cannot own or even control that which does not belong to him, right? In the beginning, God created what? The heavens and the earth, and God gave us dominion over the land, the air, and the fish of the sea, right? The fowl of the air, the fish of the sea, and all things therein, right? Thereof. So we have dominion over that. And this is the reason why government doesn't exist. Government is a figment of the imagination, right? Where can you point out government? Can you actually put your hands on it? Can you move it? Can you pick it up? Can government take the stand? Can government stand up? Can government speak? It's not among the living. It cannot walk the face of the earth. It cannot fly through the air. It cannot, I say walk on water, but neither can I. But I can float on the water. So can government float on the water? Can it sink in the water? No. Government doesn't exist. It's all up here. We're all equal, right? According to our law of this nation. If you don't like our ideology here, you are most welcome and free to move to a nation that supports your ideology. But please do not try to destroy our ideology in this nation. A lot of people shed blood, lost their lives, their families. Okay, the 56 men that signed this Declaration of Independence, Are we aware that most of those people were murdered, right? They were raped, beaten, houses set on fire, their farms destroyed, their animals destroyed, killed, murdered. Might I mention again, raped, beaten? Okay. There was a lot of bloodshed for this to establish, to lay down the law of this nation, its ideology, to be free from governmental interference. So respect that, please. That's what our founders died for, so that we could be free from tyranny. If you read the Declaration of Independence, that whole list in there, let these facts be submitted to a candid world. Okay, those are declared acts of tyranny, only known by tyrants. The use of the term status in this memorandum, notice that this is a memorandum of law, like I said. That's why that has that little exhibit number there. And it is associated with the domicile of the party in question. Before one may have any kind of civil status, one must consensually have a domicile or residence within the forum or jurisdiction in question. Have legal evidence of said domicile admissible in court to prove the domicile they claim. Acquire statutory citizen or resident status under the civil laws of the place by virtue of choosing a domicile within the place. 2. Relates exclusively to the civil status of a party under civil statutory laws of a specific jurisdiction. Civil statutory laws only pertain to those consensually domiciled within the forum or jurisdiction. They may not be enforced against non-residents or those not domiciled within the forum or jurisdiction unless the non-resident satisfies the minimum context doctrine. I wonder if that's contracts. Spoken of by the U.S. Supreme Court in International Shoe Company versus Washington. Does not relate to the criminal laws. Criminal laws do not attach to the status of the parties or to their consent in any way. Instead, they attach at the point when a harmful act is committed against a specific party on the territory to which said laws attaches. That's jurisdiction right there. Kind of, right? So that's the thing about statutes. Statutes only apply to those that are bound by the contract, right? That's the terms and conditions of the contract. So when you have employees of government, they're bound by those statutes. Those are public law. It applies to the public servants. It does not apply to the people. The people are free and independent of the government, the law of creation here. The people create the government, give their just powers, right, by the consent of the governed, and natural rights and civil rights have nothing to do with the establishment, support, or management of government. So in the law of creation, succession of law, succession of creation, the people create the government, right, because it's a figment of the imagination. Those are instruments of government that serve them, right? And the people do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies so created, because they're all agencies, and they're all agents of the agencies. Like McDonald's, the employees are the agents of the agency called McDonald's. So, absolutely correct, Melissa. You do not want to be a citizen of the United States or a resident of one of the several states or a person subject, person being artificial in nature, a corporation. But this is why everything that you have, your all of your identification, your credit cards, debit cards, all of that is all in capital letters. That is a civilly dead entity. Dead entities can't speak, right? They can't stand. They can't take the stand, right? So that's why suits have to be in like kind. That's why you object to the personal jurisdiction, because one, You're a living, sentient being on the land. You are not a dead artificial person entity acting in foreign or interstate or foreign commerce, right? Where's the contract? Where's the contract that binds me to those statutes? Produce the contract with my wedding signature, right? So that I may scrutinize the contract, the terms and conditions of the contract in its entirety. Status, it may be laid down. Laid down. Declarations lay down things, law. That the status, or as it is sometimes called, civil status, in contradistinction to political status of a person depends largely, although not universally, upon domicile. The older jurists, whose opinions are fully collected by Story, Joseph Story, I actually have a really good deal on that in Kirk's Law Corner group, and Berg maintained, with few exceptions, the principle, right? Now we're talking about principles again. The principle of the ubiquity, of status conferred by the lex domicilii with little qualification. Lord Westbury in Udine versus Udine thus states the doctrine broadly. The civil status is governed by one single principle, namely that of domicile, which is the criterion established by law for the purpose of determining civil status. For it is on this basis that the personal rights of the party, that is to say, the law which determines his majority or minority, his marriage, succession, testacy, or intestacy, must depend. Right? In the late Massachusetts case of Ross versus Ross, speaking with special reference to capacity to inherit, says it is a general principle, again, we're talking about principles, that the status or condition of a person, the relation in which he stands to another person, and by which he is qualified or made capable to take certain rights in that other's property, is fixed by the law of the domicile, the contract, and that this status and capacity are to be recognized and upheld in every other state, so far as they are not inconsistent with its own laws and policy. Okay? So, your status as a marriage, whatever. Now, there again, that's a natural rights, a religious act that's protected by the First Amendment from governmental interference. They cannot convert that right into a privilege, license it, and attach a fee to it. That's Murdoch versus Pennsylvania. You cannot convert a right into a privilege, license it, and attach a fee to it. Government that doesn't exist. We're self-governed here. Your fellow man is government. Your government. You are the government. That's the way our founders set up this form of government. The people are sovereign, right? The people are the government. The rest of those out there, they're employees. They're the public servants. That's why public law applies to public servants and not to the people. So, with these rights that we're talking about, and this in relation in which he stands to another person, okay? If you stand as a man, and you have the government entities, corporations, CPS coming at you, they don't have standing in law to bring suit against you, because why? You're not a corporation. They are. Suits have to be in like kind. This is why you have to go back to episode 3, and you do your demand for proof of jurisdiction. Juris being the law, diction being the words of the law. I personally don't consent to your statutes, your color of law, bills of attainder, which are strictly prohibited, Article 1, Section 9 to federal, Article 1, Section 10 to the states. They're not allowed to pass legislation that prescribes punishment, that has the force and effect of law on the people. That's bills of attainder. Bypassing your right to due process of law, depriving you of fundamental rights, they don't have that authority. Congress and the legislature both do not have the authority to alter the fundamental law. That power was not delegated. That power was not given consent. I know, right, Brenda? What do you mean I'm the servant? Yeah, that's right. You're the servant. You're being paid to perform services to the people. Let's see. Looking at, that's right, Diana. You are the government. You're not a public servant. They are the public servants. One's employed. Yes, Malika. We must unlearn these terms. They use to trick us into not knowing what a real court is. There is no family court. Thank you. There is no family court. No such thing. It doesn't exist in our form of government. Not at all. Not one bit. So this is part of what I'm teaching you here, and I use certain words for a specific reason because that's the term to use, right? They what we call word salad. They will use all sorts of words to trick you, like, oh, you're the driver. No, I'm not a driver, right? Well, you're driving, that makes you the driver. No, driver is one who is employed to operate a commercial motor vehicle on the streets and highway for hire to get paid. Do you have any evidence to submit into the record to prove that I'm operating a commercial motor vehicle on the streets and highways for hire? Who's paying me? If you're going to assert that claim, we have a federal minimum wage labor law here. And if you're going to claim that I'm for hire and I'm a driver getting paid out here, somebody needs to pay up. Because again, we have a minimum wage law here. Somebody better be paying me if you're going to assert the claim that I'm driving. I'm a driver operating a motor vehicle for hire. And if you're going to claim you own my truck or my car or whatever, that motor vehicle, you call it a motor vehicle, we get this certificate of ownership, this certificate of title. And the state wants to claim that they own your rig. And, well, okay, we can go that route. And I'll tell you what, I'll go back to all the miles that I've put on my rig, on my your motor vehicle, and I need justly compensated for my labor if you're going to assert the claim that I'm a driver operating a motor vehicle on the streets and highways. Now, here's the key words to use. You are a traveler. You're what? Pursuing happiness. You're exercising your right of personal liberty, which consists in the power of locomotion. Choo choo, vroom vroom. Okay, that's the power of locomotion. And here's another key, right? You're out on adventure. You're pursuing happiness. Your carriage. Car is short for carriage. Horse-drawn carriage. All of our carriages, automobiles, are rated in horsepower. My carriage, from the factory as it was manufactured, is rated at about 120 horsepower. I have 120 horses, horse-drawn carriage. My car has 120 horses. Okay. So this is articulating, right? This is stuff that I would articulate and be the law sayer in court. Trying to teach you how to argue this stuff, how to speak the law. So I haven't had a chance to fully, I just barely skimmed this, and I was actually where I was at was clear down here on the status stuff. So I'm going to jump over to the Treaties on Arrest and False Imprisonment, which I know fairly well. And I leave you with this. I posted this for you to read. Okay. This is something you're going to have to go and educate yourself on and read this yourself. Okay. Let me bring up Treaties on Arrest and False Imprisonment. This particular document is in Kirk's Law Corner group. And this is free for download. The other one that I will recommend in there is the Treaties on Malicious Prosecution. Those are two documents that we're using in our petitions of remonstrance and stuff. You can use these again, file these as attachments in the appendix as evidence. Okay, Rosa, on that particular question, okay, the question is, but what happens if you are speeding and they are stopping you for not obeying speed limit? Don't they have the right to ticket you? Okay, first of all, your driver's license is what binds you to that sign on the side of the road that says speed limit. Okay, for me, what's speed limit? Define it. Oh, well, that's the limit of your speed. Oh, really? Says who? Who says that's a limit? I don't think there's a limit on my personal liberty. I can go wherever I want as fast as I want to go, so long as I don't cause injury or harm to another man or woman, right? That sign is for commercial drivers because we want them that are carrying, sometimes up to 80-some thousand pounds traveling down the road there. For the necessary security and safety of society as a whole out on the streets and highways, we're going to limit that motor vehicle in their speed in a safe manner on the streets and highways. So here's where I go with what articulable and reasonable suspicion do you have what articulable and reasonable suspicion do you have that I've committed a crime that is an arrestable offense without a warrant? Your code that says that's a code violation, where I no longer have a driver's license. Okay, I don't seek permission to exercise my right of personal liberty. I only do that when I'm acting in commerce, right? You can actually possess a commercial driver's license and still not be a driver when you sit behind the wheel of your carriage, traveling, exercising your right of personal liberty, exercising your right of pursuing happiness out on adventure. Okay, so let's say, be cordial, be nice, and all that kind of stuff, because your argument really isn't there out on the side of the road. It could just cause you more problems because you might piss them off. Be kind, be courteous, give them the respect that is due to the man, regardless of how you'd like to respond, right? So you have to be nice and respectful, full of respect, because respect must be given before it can be received. Okay, a lot of people, the old saying is, oh, respect is earned. No. You can't earn respect. You have to give respect in order for it to be received, right? So that officer pulling you over, right, that's an arrest, that's detained. They say, well, we're just detaining you. Well, I don't answer any questions, and what articulable reason do you have that I've committed a crime that's an arrestable offense? And that's why we're going to get into this treaties on arrest and false imprisonment, because this explains it so well. And again, this is something that you can file right in your documents in the court of record. Make reference to it. Attach it as in your table of contents, right? All right, come on. Okay, this is an actual book, right? It's published. So under the rules of evidence, Anything that is published may be submitted under judicial notice, attached as evidence. There's your ISBN number right there. No ifs, ands, or buts. You know, I go into court with my books, and I lay them right on the desk. Why? Because these are published books, and I have the right to cite from them. And giving judicial notice, I put the court on judicial notice. Black's Law Dictionary says that you must have law enforcement support in order to get a protection order. Imagine that. Even their statutes say the same thing. Okay, so let's rip through this, because this is an amazing, amazing document. This book is about liberty, because again, back to fundamental principles, self-evident, at the root, right? At the root of this nation, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is the stuff that's down inside the ground, right? That's the hard bedrock, the principles. That's the stuff we can't change. Government can't change. Nobody can change this except for like all out war and totally destroy our whole nation, right? That's a possibility. That's even in the Declaration of Independence, right? So fundamentally, liberty is at our root. Life with the right to life, that would also be your children, because that is our life, right? That's why we have to understand it takes two to create life. Technically speaking, if you want to add God, that's three, because God is the ultimate creator. Nature's God. It is about the lawful and unlawful means by which government acts in depriving an individual of his liberty. Do not fall into the trap of legal, illegal. Legal and illegal is terms and conditions of a contract. Lawful, full of law, is the law. It is either lawful or not lawful. Unlawful, not full of law. This is why you have to know the law, not their statutes. You have to know the fundamental law, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What does that actually mean? We're going to get into that. History teaches that deprivation of liberty is more often arbitrary and unlawful than it is otherwise. So in other words, 50%, 51% of the time, it's arbitrary and unlawful or more. And I'll say this right now, I would say 99.9% of the time, it is unlawful. At least this is always the tendency of those who hold executive power. Who are we talking about? Executive branch. Technically speaking, we should be talking about the sheriff and the attorney general. That's pretty much, and then the governor. That's pretty much the it of the executive power. All the rest are just public servants, right? Those are the elected officials. Elected official is your attorney general, your sheriff, and the governor. Actually, I don't know if the attorney general is elected or not. I'd have to double check that. I believe the attorney general is elected in the states. Not 100% sure. See, I don't know all of it, right? There's some things that I don't know, at least off the top of my head, but I can go find it. I know where to go look it up. Daniel Webster once stated this problem in these words: the contest for ages has been to rescue liberty from the grasp of the executive power. Okay? Liberty is taken away or deprived most commonly by arrest and imprisonment. The practice of easy arrest and secret imprisonments has always been an earmark of a despotic executive power. To compound this problem, we have the legislative mills, which turn out thousands of new laws every year. The passion of modern legislatures to regulate every facet of the most intimate concerns of everyday life is notorious. This would be oppressive enough if administered under the requirements of a warrant or summons. But it becomes doubly intolerable if every zealous officer is authorized to arrest on sight every person whom he detects breaking one of these colors of laws, what it is. No one can be safe to leave their home or to travel. See, they're even using travel about for fear of being subject to thousands of unknown laws in which he could be instantly arrested for transgression. One law review writer states the problem as follows. People no longer live their whole lives. Wait, is there more there? Yep. People no longer live their whole lives in the village in which they were born. They pass freely from place to place and in transit go through innumerable towns and villages. The risk of being arrested on sight because one's conduct contravenes some regulation. Who do regulations apply to? That would apply to the employees of McDonald's, right? Actually, regulations would apply from the government to McDonald's. Those regulations that are promulgated by the government would apply to McDonald's as a whole, right? Fundamentally, which the wisdom of the local salons deems necessary is appalling to any thinking person. It would be impossible to know at what moment one might become amenable to arrest. Number one, we'll come down here. University of Pennsylvania Law Review, Volume 75, page 491, April 1927. Okay, that's the source. The revolution in England and the revolution of the American colonies are said by high authorities to have been largely influenced by promiscuous seizures and searches of persons and property. What's the Fourth Amendment say? We have the right to be secure from unreasonable searches and seizures, right? We have the right to be secure in our persons, papers, houses, and effects from unreasonable searches and seizures. But upon, right, information, that would be that affidavit of truth signed under penalty of perjury. You got one of those? Because if you deprive me of my fundamental right of liberty, at the basis here, you just trespass the law. And I want to be able to hold you accountable. That's why it has to be in writing, has to be in the form of an affidavit, and it must be signed under penalty of perjury. The history of our ancestors over the centuries teaches that a people cannot be free where the executive power can arbitrarily arrest or imprison citizens or ransack at will the properties of the people. Okay, this is a document that you can use in your CPS case. Okay, because you're going to get to the comprehension here and understanding that this is at the common law and they cannot subvert. This is called subversion of law, capital felony treason. Title 18, subsection 2381 through 2384. Sedition, subversion, and treason. Okay, the executive power is limited and guided by the law of the land or due process of law. How many times have you folks heard me say that? Law of the land is due process of the law. It's right here in my Black's Law Dictionary. That's what it says verbatim. The first definition of law of the land is due process of law, and vice versa. When you go to due process of law, it says law of the land, because that's where we get processes from the Bill of Rights, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the Seventh Amendment, right? Suits at common law. That's process. Okay? If it was a restriction upon the King of England, it must be so for every petty officer today. That's because they're supposed to be peace officers. Sheriffs are peace officers to keep the peace. We'll get into that in here. That gets defined. In many of the treaties on the law pertaining to the rights of citizens, And in many of the older and better cases, court cases, we find the declaration. The law is very jealous of the liberty of the citizen. What law is it that so regards liberty? It's the common law. And it declares, right? These are declarations of rights, bills of rights. The people hereby declare, lay down the law before creating government, before creating the Constitution. We laid down the law of this nation. Declaration of Independence is one of those declarations that lay down the law. One who interferes with another's liberty does so at his peril. Ooh, this is where I love this part right here. And this is what I say. You want to deprive me of my liberty? You will suffer at your own peril. Okay, number 2, Knight versus Baker. Looks like Oregon case, 1926. But there's actually 2 Idaho cases in here, and it's so awesome. This law also prescribes how arrests are to be made and the restrictions involved. What do you mean restrictions? So fundamentally, principally, one who interferes with another's liberty does so at his peril. So when a CPS worker comes in and says, oh, well, I can take your kids right now. I'm going to teach you how to kick the shit out of them right now. You take this document right here and you file it in whatever you're in, right? But again, you need to go back and you need to watch episode 1, episode 2, episode 3 before you get here. You'll need to understand everything that's in episode 1, 2, and 3 before you get to here. Don't start with episode 4 and think you're going to prevail. What constitutes false imprisonment? It's told by judges they have no choice but to follow us on this. Nice. Christopher Hallett's hanging out on here, our brother. Let me put it this way. Just spoke with a very credible source that congressional members know these remonstrances are coming and have been told by judges that they have no choice but to follow us on this. That's right, because all power is inherent in the people. And we have the right to instruct our servants. It's time to listen up, servants, to perform your duties under your emolument, because we're coming. We're not taking no for an answer, and we're tired of this. It will be at your own peril. You're depriving us of fundamental rights, and you're interfering with our liberty. It will be at your own peril. False imprisonment consists of any type of unlawful restraint or interference with the personal liberty of an individual. So let me give you an example. Got some ID on you? What are you doing here? Where you coming from? That is right there in interference with personal liberty of another, right? It basically involves any unlawful violation of the liberty of another. The ancient English legal scholar Henry D. Bracton, this is from 1200 to 1268. Why do we need to know this? Because this is succession of law. Rights are the law. And that succession of law, when we're talking about government parts of things, right? And declarations of rights through succession of law in history cannot be diminished. Once they've been laid down, declared, they cannot be diminished. You know, in over time, we're creating better protections and more rights, right? Better protections of our rights, better protections of our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness by creating declarations, not statutes. Tells us that false imprisonment is one of the oldest violations of rights known. That's in 1200 to 1268 when this man lived. And he was an ancient English legal scholar, right? forcefully to deprive a man of freedom to go wheresoever he may is clearly a trespass. What are we talking about when we're talking about a trespass? Okay, rights are an aggregate, that's property. Property is an aggregate of guaranteed rights. This is a trespass upon your property. An aggregate of guaranteed rights, that's your property. They're trespassing upon your property. False imprisonment was indeed one of the first trespasses recognized by the common law. Number 1, Street's Foundation of Legal Liability, Volume 1, page 12, citing Bracton's Notebook, Volume 2, page 314, from 1229. I don't know what the PL 465 means. Okay, but there it is. This is a memorandum of law, folks. Okay, false imprisonment is classified as a tort under the common law and also as a crime. Whoa, wait a minute. We got two different things here. A tort at the common law and a crime, right? The crime falls under the statutes because that peace officer or whoever from the executive branch exercising these powers unlawfully are subject to those crimes listed in Title 18. That is public policy, public law that applies to the public servants that are bound by the contract of employment. That's the law that applies to them. It has been labeled as a tort, a trespass, an assault, a wrong, a damage, and an injury, giving one cause to bring suit against another for remedy. Cause, probable cause, cause of action, right to a cause of action, the right to act, right? The right to act in a certain manner, action. Depriving a person of their liberty is legally no different than depriving a person of their property. A theft of liberty is a wrong by which remedy can be had, just as the case with the theft of property, right? You come steal my car, that's grand theft. If you come steal my right of liberty, that's grand theft. Even according to Idaho code statute, that's grand theft. So, a theft of liberty is a wrong by which remedy can be had, just as in the case with the theft of property. False imprisonment is a great offense due to the high regard the law has for liberty. In Chitty's Practice of the Law, it states, the infraction of personal liberty, right? Freedom of movement, choo-choo, rum, rum, has ever been regarded as one of the greatest injuries. The injuries to liberty are principally termed false imprisonments or malicious prosecutions. Okay? Right? Thou shalt not steal. So, number 3, false imprisonments or malicious prosecution. That would be Joseph Chitty, Esquire, The Practice of Law, Volume 1, Chapter 2, out of London in 1837. Okay? All right. Unlawful detention or deprivation of liberty is the basis of an action, the right to a cause of action, for the tort of false imprisonment. Actual seizure or the laying on of hands is not necessary to constitute an unlawful detention. Number 4, Hanser versus Bieber out of Missouri, 1917. Okay? So they don't even have to touch you. Like I said, just a simple, hey, got some ID on you? What are you doing? Hey, you, stop. That right there is a deprivation of liberty. I have to have a right to a cause of action to stop you. Like you're beating on somebody or you're crawling through a window, right? Hey, what are you doing there? I have a right to stop you from doing that. Now, I could be making a mistake. You may be crawling into your own house because you lost your keys or something, right? Locked yourself out of the house. That's different. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, I locked my keys out. Or I locked myself out of the house. Oh, okay. It depends on the reaction, right? Not only that, if it's in my neighborhood, I'm going to know who's supposed to be crawling in and out of that house. You're supposed to know your neighbors, supposed to defend your neighbors, neighborhood watch. Okay, so it's a tort, right? Of false imprisonment, actual seizure, laying on, da 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 da. Thus, the only essential elements of the action are 1, detention or restraint against one's will, and 2, the unlawfulness of such detention or restraint. Plain and simple. That's it. Those are the elements of the crime, of theft, of deprivation of a right, of liberty in its the principally here, right? So that's it. That's all it takes right from there. So these officers that pull you over for speeding, right? They don't have that right to an action. Unless you got that driver's license, but then you don't admit that you do because you're not acting in commerce. Do you have any articulate and reasonable suspicion I'm acting in commerce? If I'm getting paid to do this, am I an actual driver driving? Because it's a driver's license, right? It's not a driving license. It's a driver's license. So if you're operating a taxi, you're a driver. If you're operating a bus, right, you're a driver. If you're operating a commercial airplane, you're acting in transportation. That's that transportation department, right? That's a lawfully created emolument to make regulations regarding how to care for the buses, to make sure that the tires are in good shape, to make sure it's in good mechanical shape to go out on the streets and highways, right? Make sure that you're passing emissions tests and all those fancy regulations that don't apply to the people, because we're not acting in interstate and foreign commerce. So now that we understand that those are 2 basic fundamental principles that constitute a deprivation of the right of liberty at its inception, that's all it takes. And okay, this is where we get into the fruits of a poisonous tree. Because if they can't prove that they had lawful authority to restrain you, deprive you of your right of liberty, from the beginning, everything is void from its inception. From that point on, where we talk about finding where the wheels fell off the wagon, right? That's the first instance of fraud. The false statement made by the officer that you were speeding is a false statement, because speeding applies to those acting in commerce. They're the ones that are bound by that speed limit sign. Okay? Where's the man who has a right to a cause of action? These peace officers are to be acting as an agent on behalf of the principal. Right? So, if you're out there speeding and you sideswipe a car because you can't control your carriage very well, okay, and you sideswipe a car, now you have an injured party. That injured party has a right to a cause of action for the damages you caused to the car or any other damages that you may have caused to them. You cause an accident. It's not an actual accident because you did it willfully, right? Well, did you do it willfully? Does that constitute criminal in nature? No, it's civil in nature, right? It's damages to the car. Okay? In order to prove criminal intent, willfulness, guilt of the mind, that you willfully intended to hit that car and cause that damage. And then and only then can it be criminal in nature. In rem, mens rea. Okay? Those are a couple of terms that they have to prove. The 5 elements of a crime. Okay? Conscience of the mind has to be guilty. If you're just traveling down the road, doing under the speed limit or the speed limit, and let's say you have a blowout and it jerks you over into the car next to you, that's civil in nature. It's not criminal. That's why they call them accidents. You didn't willfully intend for that to happen. So that's why you have to understand these differences in why we have the right to demand, and it's a demand. Demand the nature and the cause of action. What is the nature? Do you think you have enough evidence to prove that my mind was guilty and that I willfully intended to cause injury and harm to you or your property? If you think you have that, then declare that nature is criminal, that I did this with a criminal intent. But if you don't and you want to assert that, it's going to be at your own peril, because you're going to deprive me of a fundamental right without lawful authority, without standing in law to claim that right to a cause of action. Okay? Your choice of law and your choice of jurisdiction better be correct, because you damn not, I'm going to be objecting to that, and you'll get my paperwork. So unlawful detention, deprivation of liberty is the basis of an action for the tort, false imprisonment, actual seizure, Okay. 1, detention or restraint against one's will, and 2, the unlawfulness of such detention or restraint. That's it. That's the only 2 elements that constitutes the deprivation of the right. In his treatise on law of torts, Judge Cooley states false imprisonment is a wrong akin to the wrongs of assault and battery, and consists in imposing by force or threats an unlawful restraint upon a man's freedom of locomotion. Number 6, Thomas Cooley, Treaties on the Law of Torts. That's one you might want to get and read. There's probably all sorts of good stuff in there, right? Actus reus, yes. That was the other. Actus reus and mens rea. But it also has to be in rem, in the mind. Okay, so Blackstone, in his commentaries on the law, states on this matter, every confinement of a person is an imprisonment, whether it be in a common prison or in a private house or in the stocks, or even by forcibly detaining one in the public streets. You sit out on the curb. That is forcibly detaining someone, because you're the man with the gun there. That's what aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. That's why he was just saying assault and battery comes under assault and battery, because it is. Those of you who don't know what, or in the stocks, that's the 2 boards there that's got the cutouts for your hands and your necks, and they threw you in the stocks for public shaming. You get to hang out in the public stocks in the town square for public shaming. That used to be a punishment. Okay, so thus, any type of detainment or confinement of a person, or a restriction or deprivation of liberty or freedom of locomotion, where he is compelled to remain where he does not wish to remain, or to go where he does not wish to go, is an imprisonment. So, for your children, because you have the rights over your children, you have the high duty to protect your children, and your children have just as much of a Fourth Amendment right to not be unlawfully seized and detained from you, right? That falls under all of this. They don't have the right, lawful authority. They most definitely don't have a right. Only the parents have the rights over their children. Don't be deceived. That's all this fraud, right? Prove it. You think you have some sort of authority over my children? Put it in writing. Prove it. So, any type of detainment or confinement of a person, okay, or restriction, deprivation of liberty or freedom of locomotion, where he is compelled to remain where he does not wish to remain, or to go where he does not wish to go, is an imprisonment. The only question thereafter is whether or not the imprisonment is false. The word false, okay, Now, this is where you're going to want to watch episode 3, right? In giving your rebuttal of their claims, counterclaims, you're doing a counterclaim. So-and-so said this, which is false. In fact, this is the truth. Okay? Comes from the common law and is synonymous with unlawful. A false arrest is one means of committing a false imprisonment. Okay? In describing false imprisonment as being the unlawful restraint of liberty of the citizen or of the primary right of freedom of locomotion, the Supreme Court of Idaho also stated imprisonment is any restraint of the personal liberty of another and prevention of his movements from place to place or his free action according to his own pleasure and will. It is false imprisonment when this is done without lawful authority. Not legal, lawful authority. Number 8, Griffin versus Clark, 55 Idaho 364, back in 1935. So that's even, that's fairly new enough. We're after that 1933 era. Okay, but then there's also Cordell versus Standard Oil Company, Johnson versus Tompkins. That's a federal case. That one's out of 1833. Okay. In reviewing several textbook definitions on false imprisonment, the Supreme Court of North Carolina stated, false imprisonment is the unlawful and total restraint of liberty of the person. The imprisonment is false in the sense of being unlawful. The right violated by this tort is freedom of locomotion. Those are terms you have to use. Freedom of locomotion, the power of locomotion, the right of personal liberty, the right, the claim and exercise of a right cannot be converted into a crime. That's Miller versus U.S. It belongs historically to the class of rights known as simple or primary rights. Description of what does and does not constitute false imprisonment was given by the Supreme Court of Kansas as follows. Pay attention here. False imprisonment is necessarily a wrongful interference with the personal liberty of an individual. The wrong may be committed by words alone or by acts alone or by both, and by merely operating on the will of the individual, or by personal violence, or by both. It is not necessary that the individual be confined within a prison or within walls, or that he be assaulted or even touched. It is not necessary that there should be an injury done to the individual's person or to his character or reputation, nor is it necessary that the wrongful act be committed with malice or ill will, or even with the slightest wrongful intention, nor is it necessary that the act be under color of any legal or judicial proceeding. All that is necessary is that the individual be restrained of his liberty without any sufficient legal cause, therefore, and by words or acts which he fears to disregard. So this is where we get into Title 18, subsection 242. Going out on the streets and highways in disguise, right? That officer pulls you over for speeding. We respect the uniform, right? But that's a disguise. All men are created equal. You take off all our clothes, we have a man and a woman. That's it. So that just blows that whole transgender theory. But the fact is we're all created equal. We all have equal standing on the land because we go by the rule of law, the common law, the fundamental law, principles, the rule of law. Okay? So in this instance here, as you can see, at the common law, fundamentally, you can't even tell someone to stop. And if you're using your authority, position of authority, your disguise, it becomes aggravated assault with a deadly weapon if they have a gun on them. So typically, CPS will come to your home and they'll have 1 or 2 officers with them. Now, what you need to understand there, or comprehend there, is the fact that those 1 or 2 officers there are there to protect the social worker in case you get pissed off and want to kick them off of your property or shoot them for trespassing, right? Because once you tell somebody that they're trespassing and get off your property, they have 4 seconds to make movement towards leaving your property. Now, I do not advocate for violence. I do not advocate for shooting people on your property, but the law supports this. What one does in their defense is to be considered legal. That's a legal maxim, a maxim of law, a fundamental principle. If I can't get you off of my property, I have the right to throw you off of my property. And because there's a man or 2 other men standing there with arms, that's aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, you're trespassing upon my property, you're damn right I have every right to whip out arms, because all the people, right, the people have the right to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. There is no authority given to Congress or the legislature of the states to alter the fundamental law. There is no power to make any kind of gun legislation. None. You can regulate corporations acting in interstate and foreign commerce, but that cannot have the force and effect as law on the people. Because we're not subjects, we're not agents of the agencies so created. False imprisonment exists not only by words or acts that one fears to disregard, right? That's all when you're talking about CPS or the officer on the side of the road, okay, you're in fear because they're in uniform. They have guns on them and they're threatening you. Well, we're going to, like when they do take your kids and like want you to enter into this agreement, which is supposed to be voluntary, and that they don't disclose that to you, that this is supposed to be voluntarily entered into. And the contracts fall under Title 4D to provide you services. But no, they say they don't do that. They get the money, but they don't want to provide you with the services. So that's part of I do not consent to your contracts. I don't give my agreements, right? I don't put my hand to your agreement. I don't agree with you. So, this is a very powerful tool right here to use in any case that your liberty has been deprived. Okay? So the tort or wrong of false imprisonment occurs the instance that one is restrained in the exercise of their liberty. Immediately, as soon as you are detained, you have an automatic right to a cause of action. And you have the right to use the minimum force to stop the trespass. Okay? There is no unreasonable length of time for a restraint before the tort can be claimed. Plain and simple. As soon as it happens. False imprisonment, common law, and elsewhere consists in the unlawful detention of the person of another for any time whereby he is deprived of his personal liberty. Fundamentally, you cannot do that. False imprisonment was an indictable offense at common law, and relief by the party agreed was obtained by an action for trespass via et armis with force and arms. Wow. So you have the right to use force and arms. That's number 23. Mintz versus Huntington, Federal, 1921, 3 Blackstone. Commentaries of Blackstone. Great stuff. Okay. This is, man. Unlawful interference with or injuries to the liberty of a citizen is a violation of his natural, inherent, and absolute rights, which damage results as a legal consequence. One who interferes with another's liberty of locomotion does so at his own peril. All who do so without lawful authority can be sued for the trespass upon liberty and loss of time. It thus is a very serious thing to deprive a person of their liberty. Since false imprisonment is a wrong suffered by a person, that person is entitled to receive a remedy for damages. Not only is a person entitled to receive a remedy for the deprivation of his liberty, but also for any other damage that are a result of the deprivation. Okay. And then you get it. Here's malicious prosecution. I want to jump down here. Here's the arrest without a warrant. The law of the land. The authority to arrest without a warrant was rather limited and well defined at common law. This is the fundamental law that cannot be altered. Can't change this stuff through statutes, which is right in here, right? A law which has been made part of our constitutional law and the due process provisions, the common law rule on arrest is based on experience and common sense. Common sense, self-evident, as the Declaration of Independence says. As a general rule at common law, an arrest could not be made without a warrant. Thus, the right to arrest a person without a warrant is an exception to the general rule. This simple rule was expressed by Justice Carpenter in delivering an opinion of the Supreme Court of Michigan as follows. The law governing this case is elementary, except for a breach of the peace committed in his presence, or when he has reasonable ground to believe that the person arrested is a felon or is about to commit a felony. So that means you've already robbed the bank. Is makes you a felon, or you're about to rob the bank. A police officer has no authority to arrest without a warrant. Right there, number one on this page, Cook versus Hastings. This is part of the memorandum of law here. Okay? You're speaking the law. Okay, folks, this document, a treatise on arrest and false imprisonment, is in Kirk's Law Corner group. If you're not already in that group, you might want to get in there and download this document. The other one is the treatise on malicious prosecution. They kind of go hand in hand here. But in reading this, you'll find you have a decision to make between just the basic false imprisonment or malicious prosecution. You can't do both per se, although you can list it. Okay. The objective in this law was to have a balance between preserving liberty and preserving the peace. Now, we have to understand what disturbing the peace really is. Disturbing the peace isn't necessarily playing your stereo a little loud during the middle of the day, having loud pipes on your motorcycle, or loud exhaust on your car, right? None of that is really disturbing the peace. Check it out. Those who committed the most heinous crimes, that being felonies, were a threat to the safety of society and could be summarily deprived of their liberty by arrest. Right. For the necessary security, safety of society, yes, let's get this guy under arrest, which means to stop, to detain. Right there. That doesn't mean take them to jail. That's what arrest actually means, is to come in and stop whatever it is. Okay? And we all have this right, because what I cannot do in my person, I cannot do through the agency of another. I cannot delegate an authority to a peace officer, a police officer, the sheriff, anyone. Doesn't matter who it is. I cannot delegate that power to somebody else if I do not possess that power myself first, right? Can't give consent for someone to act on my behalf, that which I cannot do myself first. Those committing a breach of the peace could also be summarily arrested, not for apprehension as a criminal, but to preserve the peace, right? But for the other offenses, summary arrests had to yield to the liberty of the citizen. The liberty of citizens is too sacred to be left to the arbitrary will of men. That's why we go by the rule of law. We don't have a monarch. We have a constitutional republic where we're self-governed, and we go by the rule of law, the rule of common law, fundamental principles. Everyone knows what felonies are, right? We all know what felonies are. The most common felonies are murder, rape, kidnapping, sodomy, armed robbery, abortion. Uh-oh. There it is. In law, abortion is a felony. Pedophilia, treason, and arson. A breach of the peace is also obvious and well known. What are we talking about, well known? Do we actually know this stuff? We already all knew all this stuff. I wouldn't have to be here. You wouldn't have to be here. We'd already be kicking their butts in courts. We'd already be filing the lawsuits against them in the legislature, redressing our grievances with bad actors in government for emoluments violations, for tort claims. All right, therefore, everyone's liberty was safe. It was safe since all knew for what reason they could or could not be arrested. There's the key. Everyone doesn't know what the reasons they could or could not be arrested. We don't know what reasons they could or cannot take our children out of our homes, or the schools, or the daycare, or wherever they decide to take them from, because they seem to think they have some sort of lawful authority to do that. And they're going to continue to do it until you stand up to them and speak the law and go tell on them in the legislature and redress your grievances with those bad actors in government. But where is the safety in one's liberty if they are to be subject to every ordinance or law that the legislative bodies may choose to enact? Or if the law on arrests can be changed by statutes? They don't have that, right? Right here. By the due process clause, the common law governs what the law on arrest is in this land. And where it exists, the most statutes can be is declaratory of the common law. If there is no direct language in the Constitution directing what procedure or process to be followed, the common law is to be the due process of law followed, not a legislative statute or city ordinance. Oh no! Officers who do not abide by this law are trespassers and are guilty of false imprisonment. Because process has to come from the law. And the legislature, what does the First Amendment say? Congress shall make no law. Because Congress doesn't have the power to make law, and neither does the state legislature. They only have the power to make public law, policy, create agencies, and create the regulations that regulate those agencies. The intent of creating those departments. Okay? And there shall be no rulemaking that would abrogate the rights of the people. That's what? Oh man, I just had it. I can't believe I'm forgetting this one. Brain fart. It's the Miranda versus Arizona. There it is. Miranda rights. Okay, they're supposed to inform you you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law, right? So there shall be no rule making, rules of procedure, no ordinances that would subvert the law. That's sedition, treason. Okay? And see, this is the beauty of this document, right? This book, right? You have the right to submit this as evidence of the law, and you have the right to speak the law. You could speak that right there. By the due process clause, the common law governs what the law on arrest is in this land. And where it exists, the most statutes can be is declaratory of the common law, because statutes are not law, right? See Peterson versus Peterson, Idaho Supreme Court case. So kick rocks and show me the law that says you can do what you can do. Because the law I know, and I have to speak it, that says you don't have that authority to act in that manner. You didn't have a right to a cause of action to act in that manner. We're all bound by the law, and no man is above the law. We can't create things that would subvert the law that's been laid down by the people. Back to episode number 1. You have to know what are your rights and where they come from in law, right? You have to know this to be the law sayer, to speak the law. You have to know it. So go learn it. The following is some material to help the citizen in protecting his liberty from unlawful encroachment by executive officers. First, to initiate a suit against one who unlawfully deprives you of your liberty, there is an example of a summons and a complaint which need to be served upon the defendant and the court. There is also a memorandum of law on the subject of arrest without warrant, which is legal proof of the law that has existed for hundreds of years on this matter. There it is. These documents, templates, are right here in this treatise on arrest and false imprisonment. Okay? There's your summons. Who's the defendant? The jackwagon who trespassed the law and all of those involved. That's why you have to know the name of the man, because you want to go after the man. Because I don't care what their policy says, that cannot have the force and effect of law. And ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, there it is, one-page doc, right? There's your summons. Here's the complaint. Statements of facts. Stuff that we've been trying to teach folks how to do here for a year. This is this perfect right here. On September 30, 1992, okay? That's the when. Now we're going to go with the who, because you got to do the 4 W's. Technically, there's 5 if you know why. But it's the who, what, where, and when. So on, so that's going to be the when. Plaintiff, that's the who. Was traveling, what? So that's what you're doing. Was traveling in his automobile on a public highway called where? So there we got it all right there. The who, what, where, and when, right there. All right there in the first comma. First part of this, okay? Between Ridgefield and Minneapolis, going northbound when stopped by the defendant, acting as a highway, acting, right? He's acting. He's in disguise because we're all equal, right? An employee of the state of Minnesota. This false arrest. The defendant asked plaintiff to see his driver's license. The plaintiff explained that he is not a licensee under any board or commission and is not required to be a licensee. So he informed him he didn't have to have a license. The defendant insisted that plaintiff must have the said license. That would be making a false statement. You were just informed that he didn't. He's not bound by any contract with any board or commission. What's wrong with your ears? You not comprehend the King's English? The defendant then arrested, searched, handcuffed the plaintiff without warrant. And over his objections, the defendant's acts were in violation of plaintiff's rights and the constitutional provisions of due process of law. Right? Statements of facts. You did this. This is what you did. I don't care how you feel about it. I don't care what your boss told you. I don't care what your policy says. We don't go by your policy. We go by the rule of law, the common law. That's why it's called deprivations of rights while acting under color of law, statute, rule of procedure, or city ordinances, right? Because that's faux, that's fake law. Looks like law, being purported as law, which is a felony. That's a false statement. Okay? And with the appearance of the ability to stop you from doing that. You know, he's wearing his uniform, he's got the gun on, he's got the car with his emergency lights on, right? Those are supposed to be for emergency use only. You know, how is it a fire truck or an ambulance have emergency lights and they're only allowed to use those in case of an emergency, but a police officer can use his emergency lights for other than an emergency? That kind of violates the principle of what an emergency is, and emergency lights are, and the use of that carriage or that automobile. But they're actually acting in commerce, right? If you're going to drive a fire truck, you're a driver. You're for hire by the people, and you're paid your emolument, disbursement payments from the Department of Treasury, our tax dollars supposed to be, that pays you your wages. That's the contract of employment to drive. So because you're going to be driving that motor vehicle out on the streets and highways, sometimes in an excessive manner, outside of the normal scope of things. That's why we give you emergency lights to turn those suckers on so that you can warn everyone around you, hey, I've got an emergency here. Get the heck out of my way. Now, you as the people, we the people, what do you think our hazard lights are for? Those are emergency lights. If we have an emergency, likewise, right? Let's say somebody's using a skill saw and saws their frickin' kicks back on them, slices up their leg. I'm not going to wait for an ambulance to get here. Let's throw them in the back of the truck, you know, bandaging them up as good as we can and race to the hospital. Guess what? I can flip on my emergency lights and do the same damn thing. Why? Because what I cannot do in my person, I cannot do through the agency of another. That's why they're there, for an emergency. Okay? So, these are short, quick, easy statements, the who, what, where, and when. Okay? And then boom, right into the counts. You got to go to the law. Plaintiff realleges paragraphs 1 through 7. You have to itemize each one of these statements. Now, the reason why you do this in individual statements, and be very careful, these are supposed to be clear and concise, short and sweet. See how short and sweet these statements are? You're telling the story without all the BS. We don't need to hear all the BS. So-and-so did this on this day and this time, and that's what they did. Right? Okay? Short and sweet statements of facts. And you want to separate them because if you happen to make a mistake anywhere in this statement, and they can give rebuttal to that, that voids this statement. It's called counterclaim. That's not true. In fact, right? That is false. Like, see, I would respond, they'll give you an example. The defendant brought the plaintiff to the Hennepin County Jail, where the defendant knew that the plaintiff would be subject to booking, which included fingerprinting, photographing, confinement for an indefinite period of time, and possibly be subject to other types of assaults and batteries. Okay, let's say I actually took you to Ada County Jail instead of the Hennepin. I could say, no, the plaintiff asserts that the defendant took the plaintiff to Hennepin County Jail is false. In fact, I took them to the Ada County Jail. So anything and everything else in this statement is now void. So if you put too much in one statement, you could lose some of your grounds, your claims, because each one of these is a separate claim. Okay? And so that's why you have to reallege the paragraphs, all of them, 1 through 7. Again, here's the date, who, what, where, without warrant, what did they do? And look at that, citing the Constitution, not the statute, but the Constitution. Unlawfully arrested the plaintiff and acting contrary to law, did falsely imprison the plaintiff, depriving him of his liberty. As a result of the defendant's false imprisonment of the plaintiff had his right of liberty violated, suffered mental anguish, a loss of time, wages in his work, and a discredit in his reputation by his failure to attend a scheduled meeting. Okay, there it is. Michael, this is the court of record. This document right here is the court of record. But you got to do it in the county that it was in. Remember, you're dealing with a public servant, the ones that are bound by this. Right? They're the ones that take their oath or affirmation to support this Constitution and this process that is due to the people, the social compact. Okay, now notice this says 8, 9, and 10, because 1 through 7 are here. This is one continuing document. Okay, count 2 starts out with number 11. Plaintiff realleges paragraphs 1 through 7. That's your complaint part, right? Claims. Now, there are people out there that will say different ways to do this, blah, 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 blah. This is just one way. What I want you to get here is the fundamental here, which we're running out of time. Fundamentally, this is what you wanted to do right here. That's it. Okay, here's the memorandum of law on arrest without a warrant. This is the memorandum of law right here. It's already done. Memorandum of law already here. Please, please go download this. Go download this. Oh, look, they're even talking about the Magna Carta. With the spirit of our constitutional precepts that the people should be secure in their persons. Imagine that. Corpus juris secundum, yep. Arrest, number 5, page 579. This foundation principle of the common law. Principles cannot be altered. Remember, 2 + 2 = 4. Anything that comes in conflict with 2 + 2 = 4 is repugnant, right? We all should know if somebody comes up and says, oh, no, 2 + 2 = 7. Dude, are you insane? Well, no, but let me explain it. No, I don't need you to explain a fundamental principle to me. Anything that is repugnant to 2 + 2 = 4 means you're insane. It's void for any effect. Plain and simple. There's something wrong with your freaking brain if you don't know that at the common law, fundamentally, you cannot detain another man without lawful authority. Must be full of law. And your statutes, rules of procedure, and your city ordinances are not the law.
You want to laugh?
Plain and simple.
You want to laugh? That's just me. I just thought you'd get a kick out of this. Earlier conversation, going to exactly what you just said. I looked at this one guy and I was like, I won't say his name because he's in a position of authority. And I was like, well, if you believe what you're saying, your first name must be Mo and your last name Ron. So you can put those two together and let me know how you. Let me put it to you this way: defense counsel.
Ron.
Yeah, defense counsel that was sitting in the room just shook his head and was like, "Oh, this is gonna not end. This is not going to end well for you guys." And he got up and walked out of the room. So I just had to share because I thought it was funny as hell.
All right, thank you. Michael, thank you, brother. That's what I was just going to get to here. If you enjoy our shows here and want to support me in the private, right? This is a private donation. If you'd like to make private donations to support me in doing what I do here and, help paying for Zoom for $50 a month, my cell phone bill, the internet bill, the office and all that stuff that I'm trying to work out of. And eventually I will probably have my own money, depending on how fast this stuff goes through. But in the meantime, I would appreciate any kind of support that you could donate my way. And Brenda and Michael is out there putting that PayPal stuff out there. You can also send me a postal money order, check, cashier's check, anything like that, personal check, cash, to the office there, 6477 West Fairview Avenue, Boise, Idaho, 83705. And thank you to those who have been making donations. It's actually starting to kick in, people getting more and more donations, even if it's $20 here or a typo of 40 cents. I'm not going to name any names because it happens, and it has happened. So not making fun of whoever it was, because it does happen. They did come back and actually do the $40, which I think that's what they initially intended. So so I do thank you all out there for supporting me here in my endeavors and bringing this education to the best that I can out there to you folks, so that you can use this and effectively defend yourself. And again, before you use any documents, one, you have to read it. Number two, you have to know what it says, because if you don't know what it says, it's no good. The third, they're going to put you to a test to test you what's in that document. Do you know what's in that document? Do you know it to be true? Right? If you're going to be the law sayer, you have to speak the law. If you don't know what it says, how are you going to speak it? It doesn't work that way. So this treatise on arrest and false imprisonment is only like 70 some pages, 76 pages, I think, 78 pages. Okay. And you can see the writing on there. It's not, I mean, it's easy reading. This right here is like the common sense stuff, right? Very well put together. Can be submitted as evidence on its own in its entirety. But this is where we go into the petition of remonstrance, those statements of facts, and the way that's lined out is perfect. Now, put a cover page on it, right? And address it to the legislature of the state, because you're going after the bad policy that they acted under to get that altered, reformed, or abolished, so that nobody else gets confused, including the people. Oh, well, the statute says, well, if that statute isn't there, there's no, well, the statute says. So if we start eliminating these statutes by law, by our authority, because all political power is inherent in the people, not government, this would be exercising our rights in maintaining our republic and how our form of government is supposed to work, and the limitations of the employees in government. So if we're derelict in our duties, we get what we get, right? That's tacit agreement. That's acquiescence. If you don't say something, you don't do something about it, you're acquiescent to it. Plain and simple. You have to stand up. And just for this part here, let me put the group, Kirk's Law Corner, when I can get to it here in a second. A link to that. It's a group, not the page. You're already on the page here. So I have the page, the group, and the YouTube channel. Let me try and get to that, and I'll send a link. I'll put a link here. And here it is. All right, I'm going to put that link into the group where you can oh, really? I couldn't share that one link earlier, the SEMDOM link. That's weird. Or SEMDA link. I'll have to get to that. Okay, so there's the group. Yes, yes. When where we go to address our grievances is the legislature. We address our grievances with bad policy and bad actors in government with the legislature. That's the process that is due to public servants. That is a process that's available to the people and a right retained by the people, as it's in the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, and in Idaho Constitution, which you'll find in every state constitution, is the first article of the Constitution. It's not actually the Constitution itself, it's the law. It's a Declaration of Rights, a Bill of Rights. Article 1, Section 10 in Idaho it reads as follows. The people shall have the right to assemble in a peaceable manner, which what that means, which is pretty much the same thing as the First Amendment. We have the right to call the House and the Senate into assembly. To assemble for what? To consult for our common good. That's why we want them to peaceably assemble, so we can consult for our common good. And once we got you here, we all understand that this is supposed to be peaceable, and we're here to consult for the people's common good, not the corporations, not the vaccine manufacturers, not the FBI, not BLM, Bureau of Land Management, not CPS, not Department of Health and Welfare, not Title 4D funding, for our common good. And to instruct their representatives. This is the reason why we have the right to stand in front of them and bring our what? And to petition the legislature for the redress of grievances in the form of remonstrance. Okay? So we have the right to instruct our representatives, and this is a right retained by the people. And there shall be no rule making that would abrogate the rights of the people. So those jackwagons out there in Tennessee that are giving John a little bit of a hard time, saying, first of all, you don't have the right to petition. Well, really? Did you read the First Amendment, the first article of the Bill of Rights? Have you read your state constitution? How about the Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure that's cited in the petition of remonstrance? It's in here. That's your guidebook for dummies, dummy. Follow it. Constitutional provisions are mandatory. You're a servant. Servants don't dictate to the masters what our rights are and how we exercise them. How we claim and exercise those rights is up to us. So long as we're not causing injury or harm to another man or woman, we're okay. So this is what we need to comprehend. We need to get back to some fundamental principles here. All political power is inherent in the people. Why? Because in our form of government, we are self-governed. Things are to be, the law-wise, is supposed to be self-evident. We don't need you making mass amounts of bills of attainers trying to dictate to the people what our rights are and how we exercise them. That's not what we instituted government for. Remember the preambles? Idaho, this is great. Preamble, we the people of the state of Idaho, grateful to Almighty God for our freedom, right? Grateful to Almighty God for our freedom, to secure its blessings and promote our common welfare, do establish this, wait a minute, what does that say? To secure its blessings, God's blessings, right? And promote our common welfare. Our common welfare. Do establish this Constitution. Not government. That's rights right in preamble that are retained by the people. And likewise, in the Constitution of the United States of America, the preamble. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, right? Establish justice. What is that again? We, the people, establish justice. We, the people, ensure domestic tranquility. We, the people, provide for the common defense. That's part of what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to help provide for the common defense by educating the people, because knowledge is power. If you don't have the knowledge, you don't have power. Then I need to teach you what to do with that power once you got it. It's one thing to stand there with this big, huge ball of power, but if you don't know what to do with it, what good is the power? So providing for the common defense, it's what we do. Promote the general welfare. Wait a minute. We, the people, promote the general welfare, not government. And to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Wait a minute. Again, there it is. We, the people, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Nowhere, that's a clear limitation again on government. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. That's what it says, of America, right? Because we are the Union, all these states have united, and all these other states that have joined the Union have united under the law of this nation, American common law, not the English common law, right? Rights that come from the English common law carry forward. We adopted those. We carried those with us, right? Because this was the English colonies that colonized the East Coast here. So, okay. So, this is the law. Rights are law. So you have to understand what your rights are, where they come from in law, as it is written, so that you know what those rights are. And then how to effectively defend those rights. You got to claim them. You got to speak them, exercise them, and tell them. No, you don't have that authority. Prove it. Here's my memorandum of law. Here's my claims. And I'm going to go tell on you over here in the legislature, and we'll see who's right and who's wrong, because they're the ones that verify your claims. They verify the law. Then it goes into the suit at law and a suit in equity with your tort claims right there. You got to do the criminal indictments. Then, you have to remove the immunity first. That's the key, right? And that can be only removed, ultra vires, by the legislature. Article 1, Section 2 out of Constitution. All political powers inherent in the people. Government is instituted for their equal protection and benefit, and they have the right to alter, reform, abolish the same whenever they may deem it necessary. And no special privileges or immunities shall ever be granted that may not be altered, revoked, or repealed by the legislature. Privileges or immunities shall ever be granted that may not be altered, revoked, or repealed by the legislature. This is how our form of government works. We go tell on the bad actors in government in the legislature. The legislature removes their immunity, which gives you the right to sue them. It removes them from their official capacity. The sole power of that is in the House to remove that immunity. That's the impeachment. Okay, that's all the further that House does. Yep, that's an impeachable offense. They trespass the law. Now, send it down to the Senate. What does the Senate do? The Senate looks at that and says, oh, yeah, your appendix is your evidence. Everything that happened, your statements of facts, is supported by the evidence in the appendix. Okay, that's your evidence. All of your court documents where they made their false statements, that's your evidence. Whether it's criminal case, civil case, family case, a probate case, a mortgage case, whatever. Those documents are your evidence, those statements that they made. How did the case originate? Where did they start from? What did they say? All of that is evidence of those facts of evidence. That would be the findings of facts, and your memorandum of law is the conclusions of law, because you're the law sayer, right? So the Senate will do that. And then they order the investigation for the what? Criminal indictments. Okay. So when they come back, the executive branch is done with their investigation, and they come back to the Senate and give the Senate their report. The Senate goes, holy crap, you guys got how many indictments? All right, you're impeached, dude. Let's do a vote. And they vote to fully impeach them and remove them from duty, right? So now that they're removed from duty, can never hold an office of public trust ever again. They can never be employed by the people in government ever again, okay? And it says that it goes no further than just removal from duty and can hold no office in again, right? So the next key part you have to understand is that's why your tort claims need to be there, so that it forces it over to the executive branch. And the attorney general uses what? The public prosecutor to prosecute the public servant who acted in public under the contract of public law that they are bound by, right? That's not our job. That's what we employed our representatives to do. And then it goes over to the judicial branch, right? This all goes through your one petition. Now, there's something else here that I'm going to get into eventually, and I will teach you this stuff as soon as I fully comprehend it and learn it, and that is doing your bill, a true bill, that while it's sitting in the House, in the Senate, they pass your bill. They vote on it to pay you. And then they go after them for the criminal indictments, right? They go after them for all that stuff. That's up to them. You don't have to go into Title 42 federal court to sue them for civil rights violations. No. That's a farce. It's a fraud. It's a scheme, scam, fraud. 100% of pro se litigants' Title 42 lawsuits are dismissed. At least when you're talking about civil rights violations against public servants, judges. Why? Why? I just read it to you. The judicial branch does not have jurisdiction over your claims of grievances with bad actors or bad policy. They don't have that jurisdiction. The law doesn't say so. It says the legislature. That's how our form of government works. Why? Why are we going to the legislature? Because that's where we, the people, lay down the law. That's the first branch of government. And where all political power is inherent in the people are the first branch of government. We are the government. Plain and simple. All right. On that note, folks, have a wonderful night. We'll see you on Wednesday night. Kirk's Law Corner Live. Like, follow, and share here. See you on Wednesday night, brothers and sisters. Much love. Hang in there. Do what you can to educate yourself. Take action. Claim and exercise a right. Can't be converted into crime. Don't be scared of these pansies. Jack wagons.
Jack wagons.
They're jacking our wagons. They're fraud. We're the first instance of fraud. The wheel fell off the wagon. So
that's right. Should I give
all right,
them
much love, folks. Have a good night.